What does your job ask you to hide from the customers? As a tattoo artist, oftentimes apprentices at the end of their apprenticeship will start to tattoo paying customers, walk-ins, and for a few tattoo shops. The apprenticeships are much shorter than they need to be. So if you're getting tattooed but someone who seems to be young or they seem inexperienced, they probably are. And they're probably still in their apprenticeship. But the shop will tell you they're actual artists. Do your research when thinking about getting a tattoo. And don't be afraid to wait months, or even years, for the right artist for you. It'll save you from really shitty tattoo. Also, at the hotel I worked at, if a guest found a stray bed bug, all staff were instructed to neither confirm nor deny that it was an actual bed bug. Word games were not fun. I experienced that firsthand. Went to a convention that was infested with cockroaches. Collected a few in a cup. And went to the front desk to complain. They reassured me that what I saw was just harmless water bugs and that there were no roaches anywhere in the hotel. None. Zero. Nada. Had to ask them if they'd be fine with me releasing these harmless bugs in the lobby. And the moment I said that, they froze. And realized there was nothing they could say or do. Where do I even start? Really? The only thing I'm allowed to tell the customers is this spiel about the place and where the restroom is. I really wish I could help people more than I can. But management actually trained me to actively hide things from people. Literally. I'm supposed to make the customers' lives harder. If I don't do it to management's approval, they go and hide even more things. Then again, I work in an escape room. My last job was a white labeled help desk. You had to hide the fact that your company existed at all from the customer. You had to pretend you were from whatever company the customer was using for their it. Not now. But back when I worked as an aide at a nursing home. We were forbidden from telling patients we were short-staffed. We were, and it was the fault of administration because they were trying to save money. But literally the residents would be yelling at us because their shower was late or whatever, and we were supposed to just act like it was because we were lazy. Weren't allowed to tell them it was because I had the entire wing by myself. The administrator was sick of having angry family members call in to complain and decided we should take the brunt of it instead. Cell phone store. Customers returned perfectly good phones all the time. We were told to sell the boxes as brand new. First time activations and purposefully leave out the fact that they had, in fact, already been activated and taken home within 48 hours. I'd be pissed if I bought a phone full price and it was even slightly used. I let those phones get dusty and would never sell them just to spite that shitty policy. We sell software and we have a page that has instructions for setting it up Linux servers. But that's basically all we know about the OS and as much as any of us actually care to learn it. If asked. The going policy is that our Linux specialist is out this week. But we'll totally refresh what we know by going over the page with you. I work in a deli and bakery currently. All of our food is from frozen and they want me to call in fresh baked in store every day. Dude, it was frozen for 3 months, thawed for an hour and then cooked. It's no better than anything else you get from the freezer section, and in many cases the freezer section is higher quality stuff. Let's just say our technology doesn't come close to meeting its process guarantees. But we can give a customer a phone book sized excuse of why it's their fault. You'd be amazed at how good construction workers become at hiding flaws. It's quite nearly a part of the job description and a large reason why so much of construction effort is put towards cosmetics, beyond the fact that most people just don't want to be looking at a bunch of rough-in work that's functionally the same but aesthetically atrocious. I'm a cashier and everyone needs to keep the override card over a mysterious button that is next to it at customer service. It's attached to a big red light and has a wire connecting it to the phone. Nobody knows what it does and we don't want to find out. If there's an issue with medication, too many pills, not enough. Wrong, we're not allowed to tell them. We just have to leave the room with the meds and call our boss to fix it. It's pretty easy for them to figure out what's going on as it's kind of obvious, but we're not actually allowed to say that an error has been made. Out of both healthcare facilities I've worked at, they both made a big deal about not expressing how short-handed we are to patients. Restaurant employee here. Staff is almost always sick because we get in huge trouble if we take a sick day. Not uncommon to have servers or food expediters throwing up while at work. Strep throat, colds, other contagious illnesses are always going around the workplace. Mice. We have mice. All my past food service jobs have had mice. Assume any restaurant you eat at has a mouse problem. When I worked at McDonald's back when I was in high school, there was a time I accidentally filled up a medium soda cup instead of a small for a drive-through order. I was about to dump it when my manager takes the medium cup from my hand and poured it into a small cup. And it fit perfectly. The small and medium cups are the same volume, just different shapes. They do that at Applebee's too. Buy a large beer, you're buying a small in a longer glass. My friends asked why I only ordered the small. And when I showed my friends, the waitstaff had a hard time explaining why they were spending more on what I was getting for half the price. I work at a package store. Liquor store for all you non-New Englanders, with a pretty big wine cellar. It's pretty cool. But we can't go down there alone because it's absolutely chock full of snakes. They're only garter snakes. And the reason they let it continue like this is BC they're keeping the mice population at bay. We have the buddy system rule BC our managers are terrified someone's gonna get bit one day. But for the most part they leave us alone. The restroom. I work at a small privately owned pet store. It's the most trashy store ever and the bathroom is a room with a toilet, water heater and buckets. To use it you have to through the back room which is where we keep the rats and stuff. Basically it's employees only. Well, one lady asked to use the restroom. We let her and she stole a turtle that was being soaked in the sink on her way out. We caught her stuffing it in her bra but she got away. Now if a customer asks if we have a bathroom I have to say no. I had a job which claimed all of their dressings were homemade. So we had to go to the back to fill the couple that were not. Also they would say that none of the desserts were frozen by keeping the freezer for the desserts and everything else above the standard temp for a commercial freezer. I work with artist bands. On the last tour I had I couldn't tell fans that the artist just didn't want to meet people at the bus or if she was or wasn't on the bus. She had a paid for meet and greet. So if they really wanted to meet her they should have paid for it rather than wait outside near our home on the road. I think that's reasonable. Whether her meet and greets are paid or not. A lot of venues now have security screening and that might prevent or discourage anyone with Selena Dimabag, Daryl, Christina Grimmie, John Lennon type ideas. It's just good sense to meet fans in the most controlled environment available. Not in my current job but when I worked in retail. We had to process waste food off the floor. Waste food being fresh items that had been reduced on their use by date and then wasted or removed from our stock level. Because the company didn't want customers to see how much food was wasted, it was a lot. We could process damaged items on floor or items that had been taken out of the fridges and dumped elsewhere by customers but not out of date or end of life products. We did trial giving our waste food to local homeless shelter but head office stopped it because it wasn't viable, which I took to mean there wasn't any money in it for head office. So I pushed them and they then said they were worried there might be lawsuits against the company for giving out of date food to people. We could accidentally poison somebody, etc. I'm talking trolleys of food. Liquids were poured away and written off. Food was placed in bin bags and thrown in huge bins around the back of the store that were locked to stop people digging through it. Some of my colleagues would pour bleach or industrial strength floor cleaner over it too. I had a problem with wasting so much food and thought the excuses head office gave for not allowing us to donate was rubbish. It was all about the bottom line for them. The company itself makes a lot of noise about how environmentally friendly and green they are and how much work they do for charity when behind the scenes it wasn't like that at all. They had a really shitty attitude towards their staff in general too. I was glad to get out of there. Food retail is the worst retail sector to work in. Current job, I'm told to lie about the failed maintenance and budget cuts in my job. At my old job at Walmart they told me to lie about the malfunctioning fridges and cold produce that would sit out for 8+ hours before being put into the coolers. I knew it. Sometimes my milk goes bad within a day of being opened, and I knew it was because proper refrigeration was not happening at the store level. So years ago I was involved in developing and deploying a system for a chain of jewelry stores. They offer a guarantee that they will buy back your piece for whatever you paid for it. This makes sense, because jewelry doesn't really lose value, and you're not taking inflation into account. Also, most people don't return their jewelry. Long story short, they go live. And the very first day we get a ticket because the customer bought a ring for $5,000. But the certificate of value printed out that it was worth only $4,000. We dig into the database and the code, and sure enough, the database says $4,000. The cert is correct. The problem was with the salesperson. He should have overridden the value with the actual sales value. Anyway, the lesson learned is that even if you get a 25% discount on jewelry, you are not even starting to cut into their profits. I recently started working at a fairly fancy resort, and we just finished renovating a floor of the hotel, and a lot of the new furniture had Argentine cowhide as the leather for it. We were instructed to tell guests that it was a fake synthetic material just in case. At my job we handle VA disability claims. Sometimes we get calls from veterans asking about the status of their claim, but we cannot tell them. They are redirected to their regional VA office manager for that. We also cannot contact the veterans when there's a problem with their claim, or if their medical provider is unwilling to comply in sending us medical records to support the claim. Well, this is kind of weird. So, my family owned a small bodega, and across from us was another bodega. We had this ripped up blue chair where the counter was. So my grandmom on my bro could sit in between bagging stuff. Every time this old man, middle-aged man, or his wife came in, is realized my mom would slowly lower the chair to the ground so they couldn't see. I was a kid and thought it was a game, so I would help. Didn't realize it was weird until I became a teenager. I asked my mom, who was reluctant to tell me that they stole the chair from that old man's bodega when they fired her before I was born. I find it hilarious. In case you're wondering, the old man, middle-aged man, and his wife, the old man's son and daughter-in-law, weren't that petty and came in to buy stuff they didn't have at their store. They were also friends with my grandpa. Our emotions and how we really feel about you. I answer 911 calls. You have no idea how many calls I take where I am keeping someone on mute, so they can't hear me, while talking hella shit about them. The affluent a-hole who dialed 911 because a homeless person is sleeping in the park. And that's against the rules. Dude. It's 0330. Why are you walking through the park? That girl who wants us to arrest her boyfriend because he called her a slut. No threats. No physical violence. Just getting called a slut. The family who was freaking out because there were coyotes in their front yard. And they snapped at one of their kids when they went out to pet them. No one was bit. Just a nice warning snap. Cats in trees. Turkeys in trees. Spilled apple juice at a dentist. All the dumb drawings I've made of my co-workers and taped up at various places in the restaurant. I've recently relocated them all to the inside of the employee bathroom door and made an art wall of memes. I leave in a week and I'm going to be very sad. I love my co-workers. Myself. Anytime customers would have an on-site, they'd tell me to work from home or take the day off. My favorite example of this was my boss coming by my desk, dropping a $20 bill on it and telling me to go see a movie. As a former airline employee, nothing. When there is a mechanical delay, we get very vague information. The customer probably knows more than us by looking things up on their phone. Your fancy catered event? That's tap water. Bonus if your event is done by a company based in a university, because your food is probably the same food that is being served in the cafeteria. We hide the fact that we cook our own meat from the health inspectors. Don't know if that counts. telling clients that there was nothing that could have been done after their pet is euthanized. Pets are often euthanized to be spared after long negligence from their owners not knowing signs that are actually emergencies. And also pets hate being euthanized without you there. They are usually terrified and seek you for comfort. Don't leave your pets alone in their final minutes. I work in childcare and we have to hide anything a child has done from the parents. Oh. Your child decided to paint the walls with sheet. Nah. Didn't happen. Your child stabbed another kid with a pencil. Wasn't them. I've had to tell so many parents who have questioned me about their child's day that I'm not allowed to tell them unless I want to be fired. It's not a legal issue or anything. Just that my boss at the daycare I teach at wants to save face and not have rumors spread that the kids there are actually the worst part of the school. That's right. Your fellow parents' children are one of the worst possible things at a daycare. And we can't tell you because we'll lose business. I work in banking. There's so much about how we operate that we simply can't tell you for security purposes. Which of course leads to a lot of pissed off people because they don't understand why they can't have a certain service provided for them or why we may have to refuse a seemingly simple request. For example, hey, my mom asked me to deposit money into her account but I don't remember her account number. Note, I work at a credit union so this may not even be an option at a bank. Policies can vary wildly between institutions. Can you just look it up? Yes. I can type her name or social security number into the system and find the account. But I have to say no. For the security of the member or customer we cannot confirm that someone has an account. What if you are phishing? The last thing we want is to compromise someone's bank account info or identity by trying to do what seems like a totally reasonable request. And there's so many more like that. Some of which is required by law and some of which may be institutional policy. But for the most part anything about someone else's information or anything about how operate is largely concealed by necessity. And I understand the necessity, but it doesn't make it any easier when people are screaming at you over shit beyond your control. Avoid retail at all costs, kids.